Hello again. Today, after the previous lesson, my game against Alexei Shirov, I decided to cool down your brain a little bit because it could have easily been overheated with all those variations from that game, all those crazy lines. So today's game will be a bit simpler. Actually, the attack there was not too difficult, frankly, to deliver a mating attack. But still, I think it's very instructive. And during this lesson, showing you this game, I will maybe try more to meditate, so to say, about the general ideas, concepts of how to attack, how to defend, etc. So there will be a couple of moments where I will explain uh, uh, just on this particular game, some important concepts, yeah, and you will see it very clearly, here that it actually works. It's because those things, don't wait for anything extraordinary. Those things are rather basic. You might even find it a bit too simple, but actually I think it's true. It's really the case. Sometimes it's very useful to formalize on words certain things which you definitely know somewhere deep inside your mind. You know these things, but once you formalize it on words and once you see the example, very clear example, that it works, maybe, yeah, it can get even deeper in your mind. You would know it better, even better, because one thing is just to feel it, to know it somewhere in your subconsciousness. Another thing when you kind of lived through it, so to say, and when you formalized it in your mind. So that is the main goal of this, will be the main goal of this lesson. And I would like to show you today my game against Hikaru Nakamura from 2014, London Chess Classic, a great tournament. I always enjoyed a lot playing in this event. I think the first time in 2011, and then I've played for a few years. Great atmosphere, and just have only very, very positive emotions about this event. And most of the time I've played well there. So I won once I was second, but with a, I think, +5 score. So yeah, only positive emotions. And by the way, this year I shared first place also, 2014, and managed to win against Hikaru with white. So I played d4. Hikaru went for King's Indian. Okay, he's played many different openings, but King's Indian is one of his weapons, and he made it many players with this opening. But this time I had a certain idea where I also wanted to give it a try and to organize an attack against his king. So I played this bishop e2, let's say knight f3, e5, and finally I played d5. So that is what you already know. I think it's already the third King's Indian in this course, and I played d5 beginning of 90s. Then I turned to bayonet attack, castles, d5 b4. That was I've just shown a couple of lessons ago another game which I managed to win against Garry Kasparov in this bayonet attack, and that is what probably Hikaru was expecting. I've actually played it against him already once. I remember in Chess Olympiad Hunterman 2010. The game ended in a draw. But this time I decided to come back to d5 because I had certain idea in my mind, a very fresh idea at that time. So a5, this is by far the main move. If you remember, knight bd7 was played by Garry Kasparov in that game I've shown you here already. But a5 main move, bishop g5, as I've mentioned, I think, commented that game already, that here black must play h6, because if, let's say, knight a6, knight d2, and then already once black is playing h6, bishop goes to e3, and then quite often white would start pushing his pawns like g4, h4, and then trying to play for long castle. And here white is definitely better, so h6 is necessary. And now, of course, bishop h4. This is the main move, and I've played it many times in my youth against Kasparov and other players. So this is a big main theory, bishop h4. I mean, the idea is that, let's say, after a move like knight a6, white anyway sooner than later puts his knight on d2, but the bishop on h4 is much less comfortable than on e3, so it's much more difficult to push g4, h4, and probably here already white has to try to play for short castle, and all in all, I think black is doing more or less okay here, according to theory. But I had an idea to play bishop e3. Almost a novelty, at least on the top level. It's very direct, very concrete play starts, because again, knight g4 is practically forced. I mean, if white wants to fight for equality, knight d2 is a threat. Otherwise, knight g4, bishop d2, f5 is also forced. Otherwise, knight g4 doesn't make sense. So h3 now, that was my plan for this game, because, knight takes f2 looks very beautiful and interesting, but it just doesn't work. King takes f2, f4, knight takes f4, queen h4 check, using the pin and attacking the knight on a4, but white simply goes king e3, and there is not enough simply for black. Queen is hanging, and queen f4 check, king d3, white is just piece up. So therefore, black must retreat, knight f6, and now ef5, a very new concept, very, quite original actually. But white has a certain development advantage, and is trying to make use of it with a very direct play. So now gf5 is, of course, it's the only acceptable move, because if black takes back with a bishop, then g4 comes. A very typical, by the way, move when h3 is played, and especially when white haven't castle yet, but even sometimes with a castle in this structure, after ef, bishop takes on f5, sometimes even there g4 works well, but here it's just very strong. Bishop d7, and now it's possible to play queen c2, again attacking the pawn on g6, and white must be better here, but maybe even stronger is g5, with the idea that after hg, knight will get to g5, and it's very strong piece. Black king is actually feeling really not secured. White is just much better. So of course, for such an experienced player like Hikaru Gitsindian, gf5, no doubt he played gf5. So if black manages here to get his knight to c5 and develop his pieces, he will just have a better position. That's why I must hurry, and the white's idea, at least to justify his previous play, is queen c1 here. Not so easy actually to protect this pawn on h6, because let's see, of course, h5, as you understand, is not really an option, because knight will get to g5, and it's a very powerful piece there. So king h7 is a logical way of playing, but here g4 becomes really dangerous, because in case of let's say f4, there are some ideas with g5, or bishop d3 check maybe also first, and of course fg hg is just suicidal, because white will probably just mate black's king. So queen c1 practically forces black to play f4, because it's possible maybe to sacrifice the pawn, but this shouldn't be enough. After bishop h6, white is better. So f4, and now g3. Again, if black just needs a couple of moves, knight a6, bishop f5, then the whole play will makes no sense, whole white play. So g3, white has to be very active here. But again, black has some very concrete issues to solve after g3. It seems that e4 is only acceptable move. Knight h4. That was I was still in my preparation. Well, I must say that the play is very direct. So black doesn't have actually many choices. In fact, Black, if he wants to get a normal position, has no choice practically. Yeah? So Hikaru was out of book, so to say, already by that moment. But of course, he found all the best moves up to some point because, well, the alternatives were not sufficient. I mean, were not satisfactory, obviously, here. Now, again, if f3, yeah, it looks like white is doing something really strange. I mean, pawns on e4 and f3 already, but again, it's just a matter of tempus. After bishop d1, there is a problem why black is in some way overexpanded. Yeah, so h6 is hanging, e4 is also hanging in some lines. For instance, after king h7, now black starts to have problems simply with pawns, e4, and also knight takes f3 simply is threatening. Otherwise, then black should probably try to sacrifice a pawn, and it looks like there is some play here. Takes knight b4, but still not enough. King f1, and it seems that again, black is not sufficiently developed to organize his play and to get counterplay. White is just better. Takes after rook f7, queen e3, attacking the pawn on e4, queen e7. Again, black is, during this whole game, you will see black was always lacking just one tempi. Let's say if bishop would have been on d7, black can easily be better here, but it's always not in time. Yeah, a3. And in case of knight d3, for instance, white can even take on f3, I suspect. I don't know, with knight or bishop, maybe even bishop. And yeah, finally white is better here. So that's why f3 doesn't really work. e3, yeah, that is definitely the best move. F takes e3, f takes g3. Well, now knight threatens to go somewhere. Knight e4, knight takes d5. I have to play knight g6. It's pretty direct. Yes, and here, well, in my analysis, I went to this position, analyzed it a little more, and I thought, well, it's very complicated, very difficult to play for Bosca. I mean, such a messy position that at least I already have a certain advantage in time, because most probably my opponent will spend some time before getting into this position. And also I know it a bit better. At least I know the assessment of the position, which is that objectively black is doing okay. It's quite risky for both actually, but I know, and my opponent will have to try to understand what's going on over the board, and the position is really very non-trivial. I mean, very strange. It's difficult to understand who is better and why, as it happens sometimes in King's Indian. So here, rook f7 was played. A very serious alternative is g2, intermediate move g2. And after rook g1, actually the idea is bishop takes h3 here. Because, yeah, I mean, it's not really about exchange, because its g2 pawn will be very strong. So the whole general idea of this position is that, I mean, black needs to develop. Black needs to find time to get, especially his knight, from b8 into the game. Knight d7, knight d5 sometimes, or knight a6, knight c5. Of course, he has a very good position strategically, but it's just that it's just a matter of tempus of development. And here, here maybe it also finally holds this for black, but there are a lot of tricks, a lot of dangers. For instance, well, knight f4 looks very good, just attacking the bishop, and if bishop retreats, of course, rook takes g2. Once white manages to open up this g line, things will not be rosy for black, but there is a very, very strong knight g4 move, because queen gets to h4, and so knight f4 is just not playable. Black is simply much better after knight g4. But queen c2, yeah. So again, it's pretty much about this position. I've mentioned it already in my previous lesson that often it's very important. Actually, there is a fight for the right to attack. Yeah. So who first will manage to attack his opponent's king? And you've seen it in my actually both games against Garry Kasparov and some other games already, which I've shown you already in this course. That it's pretty much quite often this is a crucial crucial point in the position. So who will manage, who will get this extra tempi to start his attack first. So, and you will see here, actually in many lines, it's all about this. And here as well. So I don't care about materials so far that much. So I want to make long castle to start first, and black also has to hurry here because, knight a6 is possible, but here the point that after takes, I have a very nice square g6 for the queen, and white should be better, even though still it's not so clear. But there are some very nice lines. I analyzed it already now, preparing this course with much more powerful engines nowadays. And I like some variations. So knight g4, very, very critical move, very important move. Long castle, well, I need to do this. And knight f2. Yeah, actually very principled decision. Of course, I understand that for Hikaru was difficult to commit to this such play because I could have simply prepared it very seriously at home. Frankly, I don't remember if it was prepared really or not. Yes, I guess I've looked at it as well. Here there is a choice. Again, you see, maybe it's a matter of style, and because you've seen already that I like to get initiative, somehow I like it more than getting some material. Yeah, so I prefer sometimes sacrificing material but play with initiative than having some extra material. But when my opponent can create a certain serious play. So that's why white has this kind of conceptual choice. So from one, he can just try to take on f8, queen f8, queen g6, and actually engines are also saying that it's maybe a bit better for white, but I would probably play in the other way, because here knight d7, in fact, also again, I want to point out this idea which I've mentioned already before, that sometimes in such positions, such unbalanced positions, a piece like a knight can be actually stronger than a rook. So here, the interesting thing is that since white cannot really get out with his pieces, and the best way of playing, also according to the engine, actually, is that white is really spending actually tempest to force black to take on d1. So of course he's not playing rook e1 because knight is very powerful on f2. So this is quite interesting. Queen g3 is the best move. Let's say king h8 will have to be played sooner than later, and now bishop e1. So white is spending tempest just to really force the knight to take the exchange. And after knight d1, knight takes d1, because bishop is hanging on h3, bishop f5, rook takes g2. Very, very important, of course, to get this g line for white, open g line. And then bishop c3, white wants to play. But of course, there are not that many pieces left on the board. So it's quite difficult to mate black, actually. I mean, there is no clear quick mate, so the game will proceed, and maybe white has maybe a bit of advantage, but not that much. Yeah, so probably black is more or less fine here. But I like more in my style is to play rook takes g2. This is a nice way, and also it's much more entertaining. Even though probably black holds with a very precise play, but this move is very dangerous. Because after knight takes d1, simply rook g3. Simply rook g3. For now, white is rook down, but actually it seems that white is better here in this position. For instance, after knight takes c3, this variation is very nice. Bishop takes c3, bishop f5. It looks like should be better for black here. I mean, it's a rook, yeah, but knight takes f8, bishop takes c2, and now knight e6. This is beautiful. I mean, it's a queen, just a queen, not even a pawn for a queen here, but white is much better in this position because of this pin, and after queen e7, king takes e2, followed by rook takes g7, and white will end up with a material advantage, actually. Quite a nice variation, but the best is after rook g3, bishop f5. Actually, still possible to play knight f8, but that's already too much. I mean, bishop takes e2, knight e6, queen f6, king takes c2. But it only maybe slightly better for black, no more than that. Black has knight f2 move that is very important now. I mean, because white cannot proceed with bishop c3, and that should be at least fine for black. But queen takes d1 has to be played. Now you need to eliminate this knight, and white simply takes knight d7. White simply has a very powerful compensation for the exchange. Queen g1, queen e7, and possible just to take this pawn and then to retreat with a rook. I mean, white is not going to mate black soon, but simply having a pawn, bishop and pawn against the rook, and of course much more secured king. Also, by the way, another interesting idea is to play knight b5 followed by knight d4 and trying to get the knight to e6. So that's probably if knight takes d1, rook g3 in this position. Strangely enough, it seems that white is better, but bishop takes g2 seems to work for equality. Rook g1, and now actually bishop f3. This is very nice because it looks like, again, why not bishop f3? Simply knight f4, bishop e2, knight e2. Again, clear rook down, rook f7, for instance, bishop c3. Of course, threatening knight e6, and with a clear rook down, actually, white has a big advantage here, if not already winning, because knight e6 is coming and black is in trouble. Therefore, very important is to play bishop h3, to protecting this e6 square and trying to get bishop f5. And white actually gets back first in exchange. Knight takes f8, queen f8, and then this knight on f2 also by rook g3. Rook g3, and you cannot really stop rook f3 actually taking this knight. Quite a nice maneuver actually, knight d7. But while white was spending 10 pieces getting back the material, black also manages to get out like this. And a very important resource that after rook h2, black has bishop f1. And finally, well, maybe white is very, very tiny better, but it's about equal, the position. But of course, it's difficult for black. I mean, difficult variations. But it might be that g2 also is enough to equalize objectively. But rook f7, yeah, that also I thought that would be played in the game. Rook f7. Now, yeah, queen c2. Again, you see here fight for initiative, is more important than material, because rook g1, with a rook g1, I can secure myself that I will take this very, by the way, annoying pawn on g3 and open up the g line. But then knight a6, rook g3, bishop f5. It's very dangerous. Black gets out. He wants to play knight b4. He wants knight c5. My queen on c1 is stuck. And it seems that black is here, well, at least not worse, if not better already. So that's why I played queen c2. And now this actually is a critical moment of the game. So yeah, please think a little bit about this position. Try to find. I mean, it's terribly complicated. Again, not even so much in the sense of calculation variations, because there are not so many force lines. Yeah, it's more like a feeling. Yeah, actually a feeling of how you should proceed in this position. Of course, you need also maybe, it will be quite useful to find some concrete ideas, but in general, what would you do with black? I mean, what is your intuition telling you here to do? Because actually, as it quite often happens, it's such sharp positions, especially in King's Indian in particular, and in very sharp positions in general, that one mistake can be decisive. Actually, not obvious mistake, and you cannot save the game anymore, whether with white or with black. So playing such positions, you have to be really careful and don't, you can spend a lot of time, because it's clear that this position is critical. I mean, white wants to castle, rook g1, and just rook g3, game over. Yeah, so black has to be quick. I mean, has to find a very clear way how to proceed. Otherwise, the tendency is not in black's favor, obviously, here. Try to think, and I will continue in a second telling you everything about this position. I've analyzed it quite deeply. some very nice, interesting variations, and what was the best way to proceed with black. So in this position, as it quite often happens in chess, the most obvious logical move is the best one. Hikaru have played a witty, original, but still well, rather dubious idea. Yeah, he went knight fd7. I mean, I understand the idea that black wants to get rid of this knight on g6 by playing knight e5, and also to have an option to go bishop f5 then. And I suppose the plan was to get then the other knight from b8 to d7 e5 somewhere one day, or d7 f8 protecting the king. But it just doesn't work. I mean, even intuitively, it's I mean, logically, even if you want, I mean, thinking about this position, what can I say? Well, black doesn't have time to defend. I mean, if white manages to just to castle coordinate his rooks, I don't think black will manage to parry white's attack. So then logically the only way for black to play here is to try quickly to organize a counterattack, actually, yeah, to try to play active. And that's why knight a6 should have been played anyway. I mean, of course, it's easier said than done, because black, I mean, it's very difficult over the board. Even analyzing with the engine afterwards, it's still difficult to have a clear, I mean, final conclusion what was the best way of playing. I mean, after knight a6, but knight a6 should have been played, obviously, because one of the major ideas, I mean, major fights in this position is a fight for black to manage bishop f5 at some point. Of course, it's a very important square for the bishop, and and to create, again, as I've mentioned already, quick counterplay. So after knight a6, let's analyze the position. I guess why Hikaru haven't played this move, because he didn't see probably the idea which is coming next in a couple of moves, which is extremely difficult to see over the board, but still, it should have been played. So now long castle, because rook g1, again, same idea which I've mentioned already. There is, I mean, it's about initiative more than about material, because here knight b4, queen b1, and still it's playable. Not that it's too bad for white, but quite dangerous. Even though engines are saying that it's more or less equal still, but this I don't like at all for white, because knight d7, now knight is getting to c5, a3, knight a6. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if even leaving this knight on b4 might be interesting, in this position, like playing knight c5. It doesn't seem to, I mean, in some variations, yeah, probably here it doesn't work, but actually a3, sometimes ab is not such a big threat here. Actually, you will see it later, but in this particular position, black plays knight a6. Let's say rook takes g3, and now, strangely enough, if knight dc5, now trying to play bishop f5, strange move bishop d1, just trying to meet bishop f5 with bishop c2, I suppose. Still probably is in white's favor. In white's favor, this position, even though, of course, queen on b1 and rook on a1 are not. I'm not very proud as white having such pieces, but okay, maybe. But knight ac5 is an interesting move. Now b4, I suppose, otherwise knight b3 comes, and now, for instance, queen f6 is one of the moves engine gives, and it says equal, very complicated, strange variations. I mean, queen takes f2 check is threatening, of course. So very, very sharp play. But I think I wanted to make long castle. Knight b4 now. Queen b1. Well, sad square for the queen, but you have to go to b1, because you just cannot let black play bishop f5, of course. Yeah, knight f4, and for instance, knight d7 threatening knight c5, white is in big trouble. So queen b1, and now, okay, there is a very powerful move. Definitely the best move in the position, but yeah, it's connected with the very with a hidden tactical resource, which is very difficult to see actually without engines, which is queen e8. That was a crucial move because I guess Hikaru was not happy. He didn't see what is next. I want a3, I want rook g1. True, I mean, for instance, g2, of course, I just play rook g1, takes knight f4, and then taking on g2, and white will again get a very, very powerful attack. Maybe knight h7 is not too bad instead of queen e8. Again, now threatening bishop f5, but knight f4, and the idea that after bishop f5, white has e4 move, yeah, so it doesn't really help that much black, but still after knight g5, the position is playable, even though probably in white's favor. But queen e8, this is a very, very important, powerful move. Yeah, difficult to see because what's an idea of queen e8? The idea is actually very beautiful and very surprising that in case of a move like a3, well, very logical, you have to play a3. A3 is actually losing practically by force because of knight e4. Yeah, very, very powerful tactics. Knight e4. The idea is that I cannot take queen takes e4 because knight a2 check. And of course, if king b1, knight takes e3 check, and I'm losing the queen. And after king c2, bishop f5, also losing the queen. So here black wins. And after knight takes e4, this is really strange, but it's also losing bishop f5. So you see, now it's black who starts counterattack. So black is first here to attack, and actually this proves to be decisive. AB, bishop takes e4, bishop d3, this is force. Take on d3, not on h1, on d3, queen takes d3, AB, and this position is actually simply winning for black. Piece down doesn't seem to be, that many threats, but actually it's just lost. For example, if queen b1, because rook a1 check is a threat, also, yeah. In fact, now the attack is very powerful, black's attack. After queen b1, b3 is very important resource, actually getting rook a2, rook g1, rook a2, and it seems that white is defenseless here. Because I guess also queen a4 is coming, attacking the pawn on c4. And in case of bishop takes b4, some very nice variation. Actually, here rook a2 is also winning. Bishop a3, rook f3. Strangely enough, like this, and black wins, don't ask me why. But even more beautiful, I found this variation. Rook a1 check, king c2, rook f2 check. You see black starts to enter with the rooks. Bishop d2, only move. Queen a4 check, queen b3, and now beautiful rook c1 check. This is quite beautiful, very rare motif, yeah, to put rook on price. 3 pieces can take, I mean 2, of course, because bishop is pinned. And after rook takes 1, rook takes d2 check, king takes d2, queen takes b3, and it's clear that black should be winning here, yeah, because he is attacking now. So a3 is simply losing, it seems. And the best move, if not the only reasonable move, is rook hf1. Very important move. Again, yeah, prophylactics against bishop f5. Not an easy move at all. But again, here, now this position is very unclear. It requires some additional analysis. I mean, it's not a topic of our lecture to analyze till there in this position, and it's impossible. But I don't know. It's a mess on the board. For instance, if g2, simply rook f4, or would be probably a transposition if bishop takes h3, rook f4, and in case of g2, rook g1. And here, for some reason, engines like white, even though still black has options. I mean, the position is very complicated, like c6 is possible. Trying to create counterplay. Yeah? Actually, the best move, according to engines, is b5. And then it gives zeros, equal position, and a lot of very complicated variations. So you see, again, it's very much about who is going to start his active play against the king of the opponent. So I think conceptually Hikaru made the wrong decision, is trying to protect the g3 pawn, trying to secure his king instead of creating a counterattack, very quick counterattack. So here after b5, for instance, the position is, for example, knight f4 is one of the possible moves, queen e5. Again, you see the same idea. Black wants to get bishop f5. Well, I think white can at least repeat moves here, playing knight g6, because after queen g5, h4, suddenly queen is trapped. So maybe queen a8 has to be played, and maybe it is a logical, way of, and the game should end in a draw. But yeah, so all in all, that was the way of playing. Because knight fd7, actually now long castle, of course, and black is just not in time. For example, knight c5, rook f1, bishop f5, he just cannot manage to get bishop f5. Takes, bishop h3, rook g1. Well, it's pretty obvious that here black's position is bad. Queen g5, let's say knight f4, bishop f5, e4, and okay, black is going to be crushed very quickly with this rook a8, knight b8. So the idea is to play knight e5, but here again, yeah, now already white has actually more than one way to press it home. I mean, his advantage, because black is just not in time. Black is just not in time. So what I wanted to say, I mean, when you will see how the game would continue, it's pretty much all about simply that black cannot manage to get his pieces into defense. He's just not in time by one tempi. And in general, yeah, let's generalize it. Most of the time, that is quite important, even if don't expect that I will tell you something which can be considered as a nominate on the for the Nobel Prize of Cleverhood. I mean, it's not going to be something extremely original or complicated, but actually it is true. It is very important to formalize it on words. That basically, when you attack or when you defend, it's the same. Yeah. I mean, the same concept goes. Yeah. So, but let's say we are attacking. Yeah. During this course, maybe there will be another course we will be defending, but for now we are attacking. So the successful attack usually, I mean, 99% of cases, you can have success in attack, or, well, only when you have more pieces in attack than your opponent has in defense. Yeah, so that is a major, actually, a major kind of point in such positions. It maybe sounds a little bit abstract or general, but actually it is the case. So basically, when you're defending, you have to care about having enough pieces in the defense, and attacking. It's pretty much about this. So basically, when you attack, again, of course, you need to calculate a lot of variations, tactics, to see tactics. But all in all, my general advice would be is that, okay, whether you have a direct, you have to calculate variations. Sometimes you have a direct way to bring, I mean, to mate your opponent or to win material. But if not, most of the time, the best move is a move which brings another piece to attack. And when you see all these games I'm going to show you, I showed already, and some more games are coming, it's pretty much about it. It's about, very often white, the attacking side just brings more and more pieces or creates threats, and making sure that the opponent is not in time to bring his piece into defense. And you will see this now. From now on, the game still continued for another 20 moves, but it was all about it. So, and that's also one of the reasons why when you're attacking, most of the time you have to be rather quick, especially in such positions, just to because very often you give one tempi to your opponent, and then he's in time already to kind of build up a defensive position, and it's going to be quite difficult to mate him. So see now, I mean, from this angle, you see how the game proceeded. So I went rook hf1. Also, actually, knight f4 was also good, simply, but again, you need to calculate a long line. I mean, knight a6, it's a little bit slowing down white's attack, even though still good enough. Rook hg1, knight b4, queen b1. I mean, the pawn on g3 is hanging. On bishop f5, now I always have e4. Queen h4, it actually doesn't look so clear, but white is better, much better actually, just because of very concrete line. Bishop e1, bishop f5, it starts to look really dangerous, but simply tactics. Bishop takes g3 works. And after queen g5, the only move, but very powerful, h4. Okay, yeah, and white is much better here, actually. But, well, it's, I mean, maybe it makes sense to calculate this variation if there is no simpler way, and also rook f1 is much simpler. Okay, so what is the purpose of it? Let's analyze. Stopping bishop f5, getting my rook into the game, and actually trying to exchange the rook which is defending the king. So very logical. If it works tactically, I mean, the most logical move in the position. So now, and again, black just needs to get his knight on b8 into the game, and position will be very unclear. But he's always not in time. Till the end of the game, he's not in time to get this. For instance, well, okay, let's consider bishop takes h3, knight takes e5 is actually just winning. For example, bishop f1, knight f7, and of course the king is too lonely, you'll get mated. Or rook takes f1, bishop f1, bishop f1. Now more than one way to win, but the simplest is rook f1 and queen gets to g6. So let's say de, because bishop e5, queen g6 is even worse. So de, queen g6, and on top of very strong attack, white can always just get back the g3 pawn with a huge positional advantage. So this is clearly bad. That's why rook takes f1 was played. Another attempt is queen e8. Actually, to play that was maybe a bit more stubborn, but still, rook takes f7, knight f7, knight f4. And now knight a6, rook g1, you see the difference is quite significant, yeah, because I've changed one pair of rooks, let's say knight b4, queen b3, and then just taken on g3, yeah. So bishop f5, always e4 comes, so this is pretty bad also for black. Therefore, rook takes f1 was played, rook takes f1, bishop h3. Yeah, what else? Rook g1. Okay, now every move comes, there is a threat on every single move. I want just to take on g3. Let's say in case of queen g5, knight f4, attacking the bishop, and also knight e4 is a big threat. So bishop f5, e4, again attacking, knight e6 comes, it's just over. So what else? In case of g2, white wins in various ways. Knight f4 is good enough, of course, again, but knight takes e5 even more direct. Again, because queen gets to g6. So d5 only move, queen g6, let's say knight e6, knight e4. And okay, it's clear, it's over. Let's say queen f8, queen g3, and simply takes, and equal material. White has, on top of everything, a big positional advantage and, of course, unstoppable attack. So that's why Nakamura played queen f6. Now again, knight f4 was a good move. Just playing like this also gives white a very big advantage, but at least black can trying to build up some defense. At least he finished development. So that's why queen f6, rook takes g3. Very direct, of course. The idea that bishop f5 doesn't work because of queen takes f5, yeah, and then queen f5, knight e7 check. So again, actually here black had an option which I think we both missed, queen f2. This move somehow looks strange. Bishop is hanging. It doesn't save at all black, because at least what white can do is just to end up after rook takes h3 by force having a pawn up endgame, queen g1 check, bishop d1, queen takes g6. But at least black is not getting mated, yeah. Let's say takes, knight b5 is very unpleasant resource, c7 is hanging and simply taken on f5, and white should, of course, slowly but surely win this endgame. But maybe the even more aggressive is knight e7 check, even, or rook takes h3, yeah, is this endgame, but knight e7 check is maybe even stronger. King f8, I mean, it's really surprising that black is not losing by force. But after rook h3, king e7, white can play rook h1 and simply continue his attack. But even stronger is king d1. Original move. I mean, not easy to see, but actually bishop e1 is very unpleasant threat, and then bishops are getting into the game. Again, knight via b5, d4 can get to some e6, f5 squares. Of course, black's position is pretty bad, but at least not losing immediately. But frankly, I think we both just missed this idea. Very strange. Queen g1, queen g6. Even though it wouldn't change much, probably it wouldn't change the outcome. Knight g6, rook g6. So you see here, I mean, in any of this position, during the whole game, just have one tempi, knight on d7, and the position would be completely unclear because knight e5 comes. So it's all about this one tempi, which black doesn't have because he lost this important tempi exchanging the knight, playing knight fd7, knight e5, and now he doesn't get this tempi till the end of the game. For example, if bishop f5, rook f6, bishop c2, rook e6, it's very painful because bishop is hanging, and now rook e8 check, king f7, let's say, bishop h5 check, takes, knight b5. Yeah, simply losing because this pin on the 8th rank is decisive. What else? Queen f2 is losing because of knight d1. Very well. I mean, not only move, but the simplest. Yeah, simple tactics, because after queen e2, rook takes g7 check, king takes g7, bishop c3 check, and the queen is getting lost. So queen f7, rook g3. You see, every move is attacking the black's piece. Bishop f5, e4. Bishop g6. Again, you need just one move. Knight d7, black will be at least equal. But no, he never gets the chance. Bishop g4. So bishop gets to e6. Now maybe relatively best was to play king h8, bishop, knight d1. One of the possible many ways for white to win, but knight d1 is a good move. For instance, bishop e6, bishop c3, and the knight will get to f5 if needed, if white wouldn't win even simpler than that. So that is totally over. White's attack is already decisive. Hikaru played queen f1 check, knight d1, bishop e5, at least trying to get the rook out of the g line. Bishop h3, queen f6, and now rook g1. Still, again, now my bishop is cutting the knight, so knight is not in time to get to f8. So what to do? King h7. King h8 was possible, but it didn't change much. Bishop f5, for instance, bishop e8, knight f2, knight gets to g4, resigns. So king h7, and again, bishop f5. So now new threat, yeah. Bishop takes f5, ef5, now already rook g6 comes. Again, just one move. If imagine knight would have been on d7, black would have played rook g8 and maybe actually having a normal position, but he cannot manage it. Knight d7. At last, developing this knight, but it's too late. Rook g6, queen f7, rook takes h6 check, king g8. And now, yeah, another, simple but rather instructive move. I mean, rook g6 check, king f8, and now, of course, it's winning position, knight f2. As I mentioned you, when there is not a forced win, then just get another piece into the attack, into the game. So knight f2, I'm just getting the knight to g4. It's, of course, completely lost the position. Knight b5, well, okay, just to try something. A bit late, yeah, b5 here. Should have been played some good 15 moves ago. Knight g4, bc, queen takes c4. Well, not too difficult to calculate the variation. Queen takes f5. Hikaru was in serious time trouble, but you cannot save the game, of course. Rook g8 check. Well, yeah, you see, you need, of course, to be alert to see some simple tactics, but here it's really not too difficult. Of course, if king g8, knight h6 check. So king e7, bishop g5 check. Well, it wasn't bad just to take the rook on a8, but okay, this check is more direct. I mean, bishop f6, queen e2 check. So now, of course, black is losing half of his pieces, remaining pieces, if not almost all. But Hikaru resigned, but actually It was a pity that he haven't played king f7 because of knight h6 was prepared and knight h6 is actually made, which would have been a logical kind of end of this game where black king was under attack for the whole game after knight fd7. So yeah, I hope it was kind of it was instructive also to see. It's a good example of this idea of mine that you need to there are many, very often you really need to create counterplay very quickly in such situations when you see that your king is compromised and in the long run it will get mated. You need to be quick. So one tempi was lost, knight fd7, and that was enough. After that, black practically didn't have a chance to save this game.